Escape vector plotted. Coordinate formed. Launch.
Welcome back, dear listeners, to the Escape Vector podcast. Check out our free newsletter on Substack, Transmissions from the Escape Vector. And before we get started, we have a voicemail from a listener. Let's have a listen.
My name's Michael, and I'm calling from Easton, Pennsylvania in the United States of America. I first fell in love with TTRPGs in the early 2000s with D&D 3rd edition, but quickly branched out to Mutants and Masterminds, Spycraft, and Star Wars RPG. I had a long board game phase, but fell back into TTRPGs with D&D 5th edition, and I'm now fully engaged with Mothership and Cloud Empress. I don't know if I can go back to D&D. What I love about the Escape Vector podcast is how interwoven the humor is with the story. Listening to an episode makes me feel like I'm at the table with my friends, though our sessions aren't as well voice acted or consistent, but when I think back to them, I sure like to pretend they are.
Very nice. That's what we like to hear. Thanks, Mike, for your support. This is a review of Lonestar, Solo Rules for Mothership RPG. This episode is about a rule set for solo play, so it's for players and forever GMs alike. Spoilers don't apply here. Off the top, I will say that, to date, this has been my most challenging review. I try to give some constructive criticism. So where there's sour, I try to give some sweet. Additionally, this review took a while because I ran this in 4 sessions, with 2 different use cases in mind. I'll get into the use cases later on, but anyway, I hope you can see I tried to give this a fair shake. Let's get into it. So, Lonestar is a rule set and framework to facilitate playing Mothership RPG materials solo or without a GM. I think I would more specifically describe this as a storytelling engine that kind of layers on top of Mothership. Now, is this overly complicated? Do the proposed mechanics get in the way and slow down the game? These are questions I had when I first came across this product, and are questions I continue to ask as I tried it out. Come find out with me. The rule set is a 24-page booklet in what looks like A5 size, which, if opened on your table, would look like a bunch of bound 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper in landscape orientation. I bought it in PDF and printed it in grayscale to save on black ink. I should have kept my receipt, but it probably cost me something like $2 Canadian to print at the print shop. At the time of recording, you are not missing out on anything by going grayscale or finding a way to exclude the images in your print job. There is also little benefit to buying a print version of this, compared to the drawbacks of doing so. Sometimes this is a credit to intentional choices by creators to make their work more affordable. I'm not sure that's the case here. Let's press on. So, the presentation. I like this to be the first or second topic, since it's what the GM will encounter immediately. There are some good things about this product, but unfortunately, the presentation is, by far, the weakest. Aesthetically, the booklet is bare bones, but not in the good way that seems to be conventional for Mothership products. This almost looks like a community copy, or a playtest version that excludes its publication art and design. For the cover, there's no cover art and no style to the title font. As for the interior art, there was some effort to include some stock sci-fi images. But after the first landscape image, the others don't really seem to serve an aesthetic purpose like portraying an element of the text or really successfully evoking anything. So I would recommend this creator be more intentional with the design choice and place more relevant art pieces or graphics, like for instance, depicting an example action scene in the section about scenes. There's a missed opportunity for some icons or simple graphics to have helped here. Layout, design, and font. For some things, I might as well talk about the layout, design, and font at the same time. Overall, with the exception of the handouts near the end, these are pretty bare bones. Not only does this make the products look uninteresting, at worst, it hurts the product's readability. It's so text-heavy. Font changes for emphasis and some nested text blocks, or indentation even, would have been nice. Each overarching mechanic has a handy summary, but they are really poorly distinguished from the rest of the text. A one-pager on the insides of the cover or back pages could have summarized some key processes in gameplay. I think there are some issues with the logical structure and flow of the product. Some content needs to be reordered, in my opinion. For example, the open question mechanic is described after offering an initially unintuitive table of prompts. Maybe this should have been reversed. And for the writing, the quality of the writing is okay. Some of the text could have really benefited from another editing pass for some typos or flow, especially for such a text-heavy product. Like, why are there repeated words in the word association lists, which only differ in regional spellings? For example, color without the U for American, and with the U for Canadians and the UK. I appreciate the opening remarks about solo roleplay and the advice on running written TTRPG adventure materials, and I don't doubt it must be a challenge to convey game mechanics. I think overall, if I was just thinking about the text, those mechanics are conveyed clearly enough. I think perhaps the description for the open question mechanic needs some more work, if anything. Usability and the GM experience. Are you still with me? Usually this is about the tools given to the GM. Since we're talking about solo or kind of GM-less material, this is about the solo player. I would say the mechanics are among the brightest spots in this piece. The author acknowledges that some mechanics are borrowed or hacked from other authors, but I don't want to nitpick any further, so I will just charitably give my hats off to this author for what they did here while appreciating the foundations he built on top of. So we have some very interesting mechanics. Doom is a metric that may accumulate throughout your solo play scenario. It's called Doom, but to me it more so represents the timing of a twist in the story occurring. And the twists happen in another mechanic called Subverted Scenes. Twists can spell demise for your party, but could also add an interesting wrinkle. To me, I don't see how the Doom mechanic closely aligns with increasing the danger or misfortune of an adventure, so perhaps the term chaos would fit better. Anyway, in some ways it's similar to Mothership's stress mechanic for individual player characters, which also introduces chaos, but here it applies to the broader story. I actually love this, and I will share a bit about that in a few moments. So, before going forward, we should talk about scenes, which is the unit of gameplay here. In other words, your gameplay is organized here in scenes. And what your scene includes depends on the type of scenario you are running and the pace and type of game you want to play. If you are playing a dungeon crawl and you want to move room to room, then each scene might be 1 or 2 rooms, depending on the situation. But if you are playing a point or hex crawl or a theater of mind sandbox, maybe your scenes will have some narrative gaps between them, like a fade to black until the next interesting thing you want to roleplay. Or if we're using a movie metaphor, the next thing you want to show on screen. Anyway, you play within scenes. When is a good time to cut a scene and how the next scene starts is up to the solo player. You are playing and crafting in a story, so do what is interesting for you. And so, unsurprisingly, things happen in scenes. What happens in the scene is affected not only by the dice rolls for character actions, but also dice rolls that help flesh out and direct the story. The approach to rolling dice is interesting. There's something here termed the blockchain. It basically asks you to pre-roll a bunch of d10s periodically, so you don't have to roll for story matters each time. I like this because you can see ahead a little bit and think about how your story is shaping up and consider aligning to that. The roll results in the blockchain point to prompts or actions for your open and closed questions, whether there are complications, and whether you have a subverted scene. And speaking of open-ended and closed questions, these are interesting, but I have to be honest, by far, I lean towards the rules for the closed questions. The open-ended questions rely on word association lists to prompt description or imagination of a scene. I tried it a few times. I can see the potential, but I'm not yet convinced. I had a hard time making meaning of the roll results. It's a little too abstract for me. It might be a question of priorities. If you are a player who wants to generate a scene or vividly imagine and flesh out what happens in a scene, taking the time to use that mechanic might be great for you. I think if playing with a written scenario or hex crawl, there's less of a need for it. So for me, open-ended questions were not worthwhile engaging with. Closed questions are the shit though. I use this a lot to determine whether a character notices something or picks a fight, or if it is my main character that does something. This is fun because it introduces some unpredictability for decisions and takes the decision burden off the solo player. There's some more variables here like your roll result prompting a yes and or yes but, which invite you to add something. Like for example, Bobby Prime tried to pick a fight with Bargon, but Bargon spotted an approaching creature at long range. Or Bargon spotted the approaching creature at long range, but was distracted by Bobby Prime talking shit, so he acts at disadvantage. And speaking about your crew, we should talk about your party. I created parties of 3 members using the standard Mothership character creation rules. It's unclear whether this is intended, but I considered one of them my main PC, and the other 2 as secondary protagonist crewmates, only partially controlled by me. Here's another mechanic that really shines, simulating the behavior of your other crewmates. There's an awesome personality table that generates baseline personality characteristics for your protagonists. If that wasn't cool enough already, at the top of each scene, you roll to determine the disposition of your protagonist in that scene. And there is a cool safeguard that makes this roll result not feel too far out of character. That's smart. So each scene, this kept me guessing. It helped me roleplay my sometimes unpredictable secondary protagonists. In other words, although this can't simulate another player at your table, these characters continued to surprise me. And really quickly, overall, my favorite mechanics are doom, scenes, subverted scenes, close questions, and ally behaviors. But unfortunately, here's a quick note that some of the issues I had with the layout, design, and structure negatively impact the product's readability, like I implied earlier, already making this product harder to use or enjoy. For example, I wish it was clearer earlier on that we pre-roll for roles regarding the solo rules. The blockchain should have been mentioned earlier. On that note, there is actually some really confusing language for the blockchain. Not only is it explained after the reader is told to roll for crew member behavior changes at the start of scenes, it states that the blockchain is to be used for roles concerning the solo rules. The sentence before that states that the blockchain will probably need to grow faster than it is used because Mothership at its core is designed to be played with minimal dice rolling. But I thought we were making a distinction in this product for what we roll for as needed and what rolls are taken from the pre-rolled blockchain. And another example, it's mentioned that the doom value may decrease periodically. I've read this product back to front and have used Control F, and I can't find text that states what prompts this decrease. And let's talk about the materials that are provided. I especially appreciated the scene list templates and the tables associated with the solo rules mechanics. There are some other templates near the end of the product that might be particularly helpful for other solo players. And as I mentioned before, there's some good advice shared here that I think could really help solo players create a sandbox scenario for their solo play or spin off into one. This could mean dozens of hours of creative play with one's own imagination. But for constructive criticism, I would like to see some flowchart or infographic that summarizes the process of setting up and playing out scenes. This could fit on a half page on the interior or exterior sheets. At this point, this is almost a conventional feature in Mothership products, and for good reason. But maybe I'm spoiled. Now, the prep required. Don't run this on the fly. Set aside some time to read these rules, especially for the first 15 or so pages. But these are zine-sized, so that's not a lot. I think with some of the changes I suggested, maybe this would be easier to quickly reference in play, but I imagine a solo player may have to do a bit of page flipping and squinting in play, even after reading the rules once or twice over. If you are running a pre-written scenario, take a bit of time to read through so you understand the fundamentals about the scenario, the storytelling opportunities, the in-game stakes, and what kinds of obstacles your protagonists might encounter. At this time, you could also add backup elements if, for example, your protagonists are not challenged enough. And finally, set aside some time for your first solo session or two and temper your expectations. I made it easier for myself by choosing a self-authored scenario. Even then, it took me 2.5 hour sessions to complete this one-shot. You'll be taking notes, like logging scenes and what happened in these scenes, perhaps noting your open and closed questions and their resolutions, and making sense of the stat and save rolls. You'll probably play the game at a slower pace than if facilitated by a GM. When playing for the first time, set up and resolve your scenes slowly to ease into the creative process. I would even say try to get yourself into a creative mood or ease yourself into it. Maybe for some people it takes 10 minutes to ease into this headspace and longer for others. And don't approach this by forcing yourself to be creative. If you are like me, who is not as adept as working with the open questions in gameplay, start by engaging with a closed questions system. My advice, prioritize fun and your engagement and mitigate frustration and stalling. Overall, for expectations, don't rush this experience. Savor it. Treat story progression at the pace of an edited-for-TV miniseries that airs in chunks over multiple sessions, rather than a movie completed in one sitting. And now for use cases. Are you someone that needs material, or can you just let your imagination take you? My assumption here is, for whatever reason, you want to play solo, and I can identify a few use cases for this product. This is for 1. Generating a story out of thin air and playing it out to your heart's content. In this case, if you have the core Mothership rules, you don't need any other supplements. Congratulations, this might save you money and shelf space. 2. Playing and giving more vivid detail to a point or hex crawl. 3. Playing a pre-written setting book with a relatively fleshed out sandbox locale, like a pound of flesh. 4. Playing a pre-written scenario, whether that is a buy or trifold or longer. And 5. Doing a dry playtest of material you yourself are writing before inviting real players. I also wonder if this product can be combined in some way with the Tombs system in the Mothership Warden Operations Manual. So far, I've played 4 2-hour sessions. 2 of those completed a playthrough of my own one-shot, What Stirs Below, which is available in stores for purchase. See the links in the show notes. That one is a room-to-room dungeon crawl, and even though I wrote it and have run it twice before, this playthrough still kept me on my toes. The other 2 sessions completed a playthrough of Fistful of Spore Pods by Joel Hines of Silver Arm Press. See the affiliate link in the show notes. That one's more of a point crawl. So, can this solo play product help you write fictional content? Yeah. And as someone who doesn't use generative AI and wants nothing to do with it, this is an interesting alternative to generative AI. At this point, I'd gladly read a book that was facilitated by this product over one that was created with Gen AI. Can this product replace the experience of a GM-facilitated table with other players, in person or otherwise? No. Does this product spoil a bit of Mothership as a game? That depends. If you want to roleplay in a sci-fi horror story, you can do that here. If you are looking to get spooked, I would expect this would be an uphill battle for most people. Why? I expect part of fear or thrills comes from at least some degree of surprise. If you are a GM, have you ever spooked yourself from preparing to run a TTRPG product or while running it? I found the art in Gradient Descent to be eerie, but I wasn't likely to be surprised by that in play. If there was some way to reveal art or thrilling elements to the solo player during play, maybe they could match the feeling of an unknowing player. I should note that even in GM-facilitated games, getting spooked is not as easy to pull off. It might be considered a bonus. Can this product replace the experience of playing immersive, story-rich, or tactical video games? No. However, in my experience, this product has facilitated hours of fun, and I expect it to do so for others when solo play is a desired alternative or a necessary alternative. In my case, I'm a forever GM, and I play solo in the gaps in weeks or months between group games. It also allows me to play through my collection, which is important to me. I get to experience the content of Mothership scenarios I've bought, but are either not a strong fit for my current player pool, or those I won't get around to GMing or playing in for years. So I do greatly appreciate that about this product. And most importantly, I walked away with some really interesting, emergent stories, surprisingly with tension within my party and story twists. And now for my overall and final remarks. Let's start with the good. The highlights here are the advice, the tables, and the mechanics. Particularly, the close question system was very interesting and intuitive. The protagonist behavior system was excellent and gave my party members some welcome unpredictability. The subverted scenes were awesome, and I kind of look forward to them in each session. I will share a few examples in my newsletter or in another podcast episode. I think having the structure of the scenes is something crucial that made an impact on me. A continuous location crawl is appealing to me, and I tend to lean towards that. But using scenes as a unit of gameplay or chunks is more practical, and I would expect more cinematic and narratively satisfying. So you might be able to tell that I care about this product. I didn't intend for this to come off as I am merely shitting on this product. And further to that, I have been a subscriber to this creator's DriveThruRPG page. And I do think he's building solo gaming capacity for a bunch of TTRPGs. In this case, he offered a product to fill an important void in one of the games that I love, and I think he deserves to be compensated and credited for that. And it could be a great product. So with that said, time for the negatives and the areas for improvement. These are clearly the look and presentation of the product, some of the logical structure, some missed proofreading, and some hindrances to its ease of use, plus missed opportunities to support that. One of my notes while reading the document was all caps, "Fuck, this shit is dense." And that was a reoccurring thought. So I want to really like this product, but I feel very strongly about the next thing. I don't hate this product, but I'm frustrated here. This could be a lot better with some simple fixes, some of which I have already suggested in this review. With the current version of this product I have at the time of recording, I can't rate this higher than 3 out of 5 stars. Perhaps that currently puts me in the minority of reviewers, but I think rating any higher would be an insult to a creator community that puts in effort, thought, and even capital towards the design and look of their products. What kind of message does a 5 out of 5 rating send to other TTRPG creators? I'm not asking for much here. I love that Mothership products range from minimalist or do-it-yourself design to elaborate, highly produced design. And related to this, I normally champion how affordable Mothership products are. This product, as it is at the time of recording, is overpriced at nearly $7 Canadian or $5 American for the PDF only. I don't think this content should be free, but I would forgive the presentation if it was free. To be honest, this has the look of a bare-bones playtest or community copy. The creator, Peter, is prolific and I'm sure made bank on the digital sales of this product. So I invite or challenge this creator to reinvest some of his earnings from this product, to reissue an improved version, not only to previous digital purchasers, but for future purchasers. The last update was March 2021. Peter, as far as I know, there has not been a print run of this yet, so this would be an easy time to make even some simple changes. But why not go a little further and hire an artist for even 1 or 2 pieces of art? The Mothership community can help connect you. And coming from someone who's no Michelangelo himself, I would respect you for including your own art. So make some of these improvements, and I will issue a follow-up review in some form and champion this product. I think you should be rewarded for your hard work, but some of this lack of care puts a bit of a bad taste in my mouth, and I feel like I need to draw a line here. And now my final word. To return to one of my initial questions, is this overly complicated? For what it sets out to do, I don't think so, for the most part. I should note that there are other solo rules for other games, such as the Cloud Empress ones written by Watt, that are simpler and have facilitated some really enjoyable solo sessions for me. In the case of Lonestar, at several points of reading it, I was impressed by a mechanic, only to be sometimes intrigued or concerned when that nesting doll opens up to reveal a sub-mechanic, and I would describe myself feeling waves of apprehension on this. Overall, I am impressed with the mechanical depth of the systems, but I often ask myself, what the fuck is this now? And do the proposed mechanics get in the way and slow down the game? Compared to a group game, your solo game with these rules will go at a slower pace, even if you exclude all the substantial creative processing needed for open-ended questions. Do the mechanics get in the way? I don't think so for the most part, but I intentionally excluded the open question system for now, so I can make the experience smoother. I also don't really use the complications sub-mechanic for closed questions, so with that perspective, your selective use of the mechanics will facilitate a certain degree of depth to your storytelling or story crafting and solo gaming. You can find a balance that works for you. For me, this means I can complete a playthrough of a trifold pamphlet scenario in 4 to 6 hours. There's quite a lot to like here, but as it stands for now, in its March 2021 version, unless you are dying to play solo at the current full price, wait for a sale. When I can, I will mention when it's on sale or include any updates about this product in my free newsletter, Transmissions from the Escape Vector. So that's my review of Lonestar, Solo Rules for Mothership RPG. What do you think? Even if you don't fully agree with my assessment, I hope you can understand it. There is a bit of a risk here for me, since I'm a relatively junior creator in this community. Although Peter and I are not close colleagues, I do consider him as a senior peer in some way. And in this community, we should be able to offer some healthy constructive criticism about the things we like to see and the things we don't like to see. So here, I'm pushing Peter to elevate this product. Please stand by for updates. That's it for this time. Lonestar, Solo Rules for Mothership RPG, is written by Peter Ruben Burgess from Parts Per Million. you can find the PDF version on DriveThruRPG. As per my review, put it in your wish list. When you're ready to buy it, consider picking it up along with other Mothership titles using our affiliate link in the show notes. It really helps the show. In any case, let Peter at Parts Per Million know we sent you. Also, check out our own original Mothership adventure, What Stirs Below, available on DriveThruRPG. Use the affiliate link in the show notes and on the MothershipRPG.com web store.
Our music is from Epidemic Sound. To stay in the loop with all things Escape Vector, use the link tree with all our links in the show notes. As always, thanks to our listeners. Over and out.